So little birdie told me that you need help doing your makeup. So I'm here and I'm gonna give you a step-by-step guide on how to do a full face. So grab your brushes and follow along with me, because by the end of this video, we're gonna make sure you know how to do a full face of makeup. So the first step in our beginner-friendly full face of glam is to prime. Now, if you don't know what primer is a very essential step to your makeup. So this is basically what's gonna come after skincare. It's the first product to lay down before you put on your foundation, your concealer. Think of primer as the product that's the barrier in between your foundation and your skincare, right? So what primer is intended to do is it's intended to not only elongate the wear of your makeup, but it's also going to change the appearance of your makeup. So different primers do different things. You might have some primers that give a dewier effect, which kind of gives a little bit more of a sheen. And you might also have primers that do the opposite, where they make you look more matte, where you have absolutely no shine at all. For me, because I have oily skin, I'm using the YSL Touche Éclat primer. So this is the type of primer that's gonna give you like a little bit of a soft matte appearance, and it kind of has like a jelly-like formula, which is gonna help fill in my pores. I also have very large pores, so this is the type of primer that's gonna make my skin look smoother, and it's just gonna make everything go on so much more seamless. So now that we've gone in with primer, it's now time to go in with our foundation. So the foundation I'm using today is by Bperfect Cosmetics. This is the Chroma cover. Different foundations like primers are going to do different things. So I highly suggest doing your research to find out what is your skin type. You can just do a basic questionnaire online, but basically you want to find out what skin type you have prior to picking out a foundation, because that's ultimately what's going to look best on you. So I have oily skin, which is why I use something that has a little bit more longevity. I also have a lot of discoloration here, so I prefer to go in with something that's a little bit more full coverage. Now what I'm doing right now is I'm color matching myself. This is actually the first time that I use this foundation. So what I'm doing is I'm applying it right here on my chin, and then I'm blending it down into my neck. This is kind of the best way for me to do a color match. I don't ever like to actually match to my face, because the face tends to have, it just has more discoloration than the rest of the body. I tend to see that the neck and the chest have a little bit more of an even tone, and it just makes sense to match to this area, since, you know, we're gonna be covering the face with makeup anyway. And from what I can see, this is a pretty good match. So now that I like my match, I'm gonna go in with the rest of the product, and I'm gonna start working in sections. So it's very important that you work in sections, meaning that you apply foundation in one area, and before moving on to another part of your face, you want to blend that out. A mistake I see a lot is people applying foundation all over their face first, so they're putting dots all over their skin, and then they go in and they blend it out. The problem that I have with that is 9 out of 10 times you're using way more product than you need. So if you're someone who struggles with cakiness and you find that your makeup is separating, it can be a lot of different things. But most of the time what I think it is a lot of people using more product than their skin actually can hold. All right, so the next step in this makeup is we're gonna be concealing our under eye. So I'm using the Natasha Denona concealer, and I'm using the shade R4. So my concealer tends to have a little bit more of a peachy tone, because I am medium tone. I'm kind of like light medium. And I do have dark circles that lean a little bit more blue-gray. So I'm applying my concealer under my eyes. However, I'm not going too close to my under eye, because I notice that whenever I apply concealer like right under the lash line, I have creasing there that naturally occurs, so product tends to build up there. So instead, I kind of like to apply it a little bit lower here, where I can blend it up and it has more of a thinner application. So I'll show you guys what I mean right now when I blend it out. But I like to apply it under my eyes. I also like applying concealer on the center of my nose, just to kind of give me a natural highlight, and then a little bit on my chin. I don't do anything on my forehead just because I have bangs, so there's not really any point. I'm gonna go in with a pointed synthetic brush, and I'm just gonna blend. Now when I blend, I'm just tapping. It's very important that specifically for the under eye, you just wanna tap, whether you're using a sponge or a brush. It's so important to just tap, because if you go back and forth, you're gonna have streaks on your face. That also goes with your foundation. Remember how I said I like to apply my concealer lower than my lash line, so not directly underneath, because when I go in to blend it out, I pull it up. That's gonna ensure that my application is very thin under the eye, which is gonna help me crease less. Also, one thing to note about creasing, you guys, is it's kind of inevitable. Creasing is there. If you have a natural crease under your eye, you're gonna have a crease with concealer, and that's just normal. I feel like a lot of times we hear creaseless or crease proof, and we can try, like we can really try to minimize the appearance of creasing, but it's actually gonna be there. Okay, so now that we've concealed our under eyes, the next step is to go in with contour. So I'm using the Rare Beauty contour stick in the shade Serene. This actually just came out last week, and I wasn't gonna initially buy it, you guys. I actually mentioned this in my last video, in my new release video, but I walked into Sephora and I tried it out, and honestly, you guys, I think I love it. So I'm just gonna put 2 dots here. Now, it's very important to know, where do you even bronze, right? So typically when you bronze and contour, it's always gonna be on the perimeters of the face, meaning like the edges, really far out towards like the hairline, even around the neck area. You want it more pulled back, because bronzing and contouring is meant to kind of like shape shift. It's meant to give you more shadow, more dimension. It's meant to really sculpt the skin. So for me, whenever I contour my face, I honestly like to contour a little bit higher, just because I do have a round face. So I really try to manipulate the shape of my face. So you can see I applied 2 little dots here, and I go very close to my hairline. Now, sometimes some people like to kind of start right here at the center. So this little area of your ear, they'll kind of use that as a guide. Because this area of my face sticks out a little bit more, I personally like to go a little bit higher up. And then what I just do is I'll go in with an angled brush and I'll blend it out. So as I blend, the same way I was blending out my under eye concealer, I just stipple. So I just tap, tap. I don't like to go like this, because that's gonna disrupt my foundation and my concealer. When I do blend it out, I pull up towards my hairline like this, and then I also go down. However, I try not to pull my contour past the outer corner of my eye. So what I mean by that is my eyelashes stop right here, right? So I like to stop right here, because if I was to go farther in, it's gonna give me like this really awkward shadow that comes all the way towards my nose, which is not natural. Personally though, I like to also go a little bit underneath my jawline. I do a little bit at my temple, and then I also like to do a little bit on the bridge of my nose, down the center of my nose, and then at the bottom right here. And the reason why is because I feel like this just gives my overall face more structure and more flow to my makeup. I feel like if I only kept my contour on my cheekbones, I'm gonna have this like weird amount of dimension here, but the rest of my face is gonna fall a little bit more flat. So to really bring everything together, I like to focus my contour in all of these areas, which is pretty standard. And when it comes to blending out the rest of the face, I do the exact same technique and I use the same brush. Now for the jawline, I will, however, bring it down to the neck, just because I don't want to have a stripe here at the same time. So I'm gonna pull this down towards the sides of my neck. I'm not gonna pull it down here, I'm gonna pull it down to the sides, because you see how we have this natural shadow that kind of curves into like our collarbone? That's basically the form that you're trying to kind of follow. It makes sense, you know? So think of like your contour is just enhancing the structure that you already have there. It's just making it look more snatched. I will actually switch to a jumbo eyeshadow blending brush. So something that's very, very fluffy and something that is synthetic, just because that's gonna help blend out much easier. So I'm gonna go in with my brush, and instead of tapping, for this method, I am gonna go in and I'm just gonna like blend as if I was blending eyeshadow. So I'm following that same area where I applied my product. So I'm not going all over. I'm basically just following the lines that I have. Even though I did dotted lines, I'm connecting them. So I'm connecting and then just kind of blending them out. And this is gonna help give my nose just a little bit more of that shadow that I want. I want more dimension, so that way everything just kind of connects and everything flows very evenly. Okay, so now that we've done our cream contour, we're gonna go in and we're gonna set our under eyes. So we're gonna jump back to the under eyes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab some setting powder. I'm using the One Size translucent powder. I'm gonna pick up a powder puff, and I'm just gonna pick up some powder. I'm gonna grab the excess and put it on the back of my hand. What this does is it basically creates an even layer on my powder puff, because if I was just to apply it like this, look how uneven that distribution is. So what I'm doing is I'm evening it out so that way I don't get a patchy under eye. I also want the thinnest layer possible, because depending on the under eyes, if you have dry under eyes or if you're prone to like a crepey under eye, you want to work with thinner layers. You know, it's always easier to add than to take away. I'm gonna go in with the same brush that I was using to blend out my concealer, and what I'm just doing right now is I'm smoothing out my under eyes to ensure that if I've had any creasing in between the time that I applied my concealer and now, they're gonna be as smoothed out as possible. And then with my powder puff, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna look up, and I'm just gonna start pressing under my eye. So I'm starting right under the eye first, because that's the area where our creasing starts first. That's where it occurs the quickest. And then once I feel out that I've set right under the lash line, I'm gonna start to go down a little bit lower to like my cheek area right here. And I wanna show you guys my face with the setting powder and without it, so you can see what a difference this makes. This just creates such a finished application. Now let's go in and do the same thing on the other side. Once I go in and set my under eyes, I like to go in with the rest of the product that's on my powder puff, and I'll just lightly apply it to my T-zone. So the T-zone is this area around the forehead area, the nose, and the chin. This is where I typically get the most oily. Okay, you guys, so we're almost done with the complexion. The next product we're gonna go in with is bronzer. So this is powder bronzer. We did our contour first, which was great, but I always like to add powder bronzer because this is just what's gonna really lock in that contour. It's also gonna warm up the face too. Contours tend to be a little bit more neutral, a little bit more cool tone. A bronzer is always gonna be much warmer. So I'm gonna go in and pick up my bronzer with a fluffy brush, not too big, and I'm gonna focus this bronzer right on that same area that I applied my contour. So think of doing the exact same steps, but now you're doing it with a fluffier brush and with a powder product. The only area where I won't completely reapply product to is my nose, just because I feel like if I go in with powder bronzer on my nose right now, it's gonna be much more dramatic. I do that when I want like a dramatic full face. So I will do another video on a full glam. This here is just a beginner friendly glam. So we're gonna keep it simple by just tapping a thin layer on the areas that we applied our contour. The next step in our beginner full face glam is blush. Now, when it comes to blush, placement is the most important thing. So the tone I'm using, this is by Kaliedos. This is in the shade, I'm gonna be honest you guys, I don't remember the shade, but I'll put it in the description. Now this is a more rosy tone. You can see it's kind of like a pale rose, and I'm using a like medium size angled brush by Fenty. So when it comes to blush, your placement is very important. What does that even mean? It's where you apply your blush. Now, if you're someone who naturally has higher cheekbones that pull out, you most likely have a face that has a lot of natural structure. Because I do have a rounder face, I personally like to focus my blush really high into the temple area and around the highest point of my cheekbone, because if I look straight, it kind of creates this lifted appearance. If I was to place my blush around this area right here, it's just gonna add more fullness to the center of my face, which is what I don't want. I'm trying to do the opposite. So if you're like me and you tend to have a rounder face with cheeks that are a bit fuller, I highly recommend focusing your blush higher into your cheekbone area, even kind of like under your eye right here. I just think it creates this really pretty flush. Remember like how they used to do makeup in the 80s? Now they went way more dramatic with their blush, but I feel like the structure and the placement of the blush was just so good. Okay, so the next step in our beginner friendly glam, we are almost done, you guys. We knocked out complexion. We're gonna go in with eyeshadow. So I'm using this palette by, this is by Flower Nose. This is their terracotta palette, you guys. First of all, the packaging is everything, but we're gonna be doing a 3-colored look. Now, a 3-colored look is basically when you just use 3 eyeshadows. We're trying to keep it at a minimum. So I'm gonna go in and I'm actually gonna prime my eyes with the same concealer that I was using on my face. Now, priming is super important because it's the same thing as the skin. You know, if you don't have a primer laid down, your eyeshadow specifically, it's actually more important than the face, because your eyeshadow is not gonna come out true to color, and everybody creases on their eyes, you guys, like everybody. So if you don't have any sort of primer down or concealer, you're just gonna have a very muddy, creasy eyeshadow application. Okay, so our eyes have 3 main points. We have our brow bone here, we have our crease here. So our crease is this area right here where our eyeball kind of starts. So if you use your finger or a brush, you can feel that top point of your eyeball. That's typically where the crease is. And then we have our eyelid. This is our entire eyelid right here. So this is that space that basically kind of just curves around the eyeball. So think of it like this. We're trying to create this really nice contrast on our eye. So what we typically do is we use a lighter shade. I'm gonna go in with this light brown right here. This is what we call the transition shade. So your transition shade is typically gonna be the highest point in your eyeshadow. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus my transition shade all along my crease. It's gonna touch my eyelid, but that's okay because that's gonna get covered anyway. But what I'm basically doing is I'm using a fluffy brush and I'm applying that product in my crease. And as I blend it out, I'm blending in circular motion. This is very important to note, you guys. You wanna go in circular motion. If you go back and forth, you're just gonna have this line of eyeshadow that goes back and forth. But if you go in circular motion, you're gonna get a very nice, smoky, diffused appearance. Now, where does the brow bone play into this? your brow bone right here has a really nice natural highlight from your concealer and just your natural skin tone. We're trying to keep that highlight there in order to kind of maintain the structure of our eye. If we were to go all the way up here and cover our brow bone with eyeshadow, even if it's a light eyeshadow like a transition, it's not really gonna give us that natural structure that we're looking for. Now that doesn't mean that you can't put a highlight underneath your brow bone, but you definitely want your brow bone highlight to be much lighter than the eyeshadow that you have as your transition. If not, what's gonna happen is they're just gonna blend in together and you're gonna lose that depth that you're trying to create. Okay, so now that my transition is laid down, we're gonna go into the next shade. So the next shade is gonna be this kind of like terracotta brown right here. I don't know if you guys can see it. It's pulling a little bit red. So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna mix it with this dark brown next to it. We're gonna tap off the excess. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus this shade on the outer corner of the eye. So the outer corner is basically this area right here. It's the area that connects to the crease and your basically outer end of your eyelid. So what I'm doing is I'm focusing this here to kind of create that really nice contour. This is what's really gonna help shape out the eye. Okay, so we're almost done with the eyes, I promise. The last shade that we're gonna go in with is this light gold shimmer. I'm just gonna go in with my finger and I'm gonna start to just tap this on the main area of my eyelid, which is kind of like this start right here. If you notice, when we're applying the darker shades, we intentionally made sure to not apply any shades here. Even though we did blend them in and they kind of made their way there, we didn't actually go all over the lid, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to save this area to keep it nice and clean so that when we pop on a color like this, it comes out very true to color and it's a lot brighter. You always want a lighter tone on your eyelid if you want to create like a nice soft contoured eye, because this is what's really going to bring out your lid. It's going to bring out the lid, which is going to create more depth on the outer corner, and that's how you're going to get that contour and that really nice eye shape that you're trying to create. We're going to go in with a small pencil brush, and I'm going to use the transition shade and the second to darkest tone from the eyeshadow palette, and I'm just going to focus this. I'm actually going to use the mirror a little bit closer to my eye. I'm going to focus this on the bottom outer corner of my eye, so I'm not going to bring it all the way in, because that could just kind of close my eye a little bit. I'm really trying to open them up. So I'm gonna focus it more towards the outer corner of my bottom lash line. So the next step for the eyes is mascara, but the first thing we have to do is we have to curl our eyelashes, especially me, because my lashes tend to kind of lean downwards. So I'm going in with just a standard curler, just gonna curl my lashes. It's always better to curl before, you guys. Some people like to curl after. Personally, I don't feel like my lashes are strong enough for that. I've actually heard of people curling after and their lashes crack off, so I'm not gonna do that. And I'm just gonna go straight in and I'm gonna coat my entire lash with some mascara. The mascara I'm using today is the Superfan Mascara by Smashbox. This one's really good. It's not waterproof though, but I do recommend, if you're someone that struggles with watery eyes, I highly suggest that you go with a waterproof mascara, because you're gonna have less bleeding on the corners and, you know, just overall it's gonna be better for you. Mascara is on. Now for the next step, I feel like this is very optional. If you like eyeliner, by all means do eyeliner. You don't have to do eyeliner though. I am gonna do a very thin coat of eyeliner just right on my lash line, because I am gonna apply false lashes. Every time you apply false lashes, fake lashes, it's super important to just kind of create a little bit of like a line with eyeliner, because you don't want to have gaps in between. If, let's say for example, you are wearing eyeliner and you don't properly apply your lashes, which number one, we should take care of that. But if, let's say you are that person, you're gonna have a gap that's very obvious. So I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna create a baby wing. So I'm using some liquid eyeliner. This is the Alamar Cosmetics Cheetos liner. Okay, so my eyeliner is done. The next step is to go in with lashes. So these lashes that I'm using are already pre-cut. It's very important that you do pre-measure your eyelashes and cut them to fit your eye shape. So I typically always cut from the outer end. Oops, these are super glary. So these lashes are by Tatti lashes in this style 90s baby. So you guys can see these have already been pre-cut at the ends, but they were much longer. I pre-cut them because if I was to just leave them as is, they would be too long for my eye, which number one would be very uncomfortable, and it would just kind of make my eyes look more droopy. So I don't want that. So instead, I measured them to fit my eye. So aside from measuring your eyelashes, I think the most important thing is making sure that you let the glue dry down for at least 30 seconds to 1 minute. So the point is, we need it to be tacky. If we touch the band and it doesn't get stuck to our finger, that means it's not gonna stick to the eye. So I'm gonna go on and I'm just gonna apply this right on my lash line. So it's on the lash line. It's not actually like touching my lashes, angling this right against my lash line. So it's just against the skin, but right above my natural lashes. Going with a tweezer, and I'm just gonna start to press down on the inner corner so that way it's very secure, and then I'm gonna press down on the outer corner, and then I'm just gonna press on the center. This is gonna ensure that the entire lash is completely glued down, and then I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna pinch my natural lashes with the false lashes. So when I look straight, it should be aligned to my eye. And the final tip that I have for the eyes, very importantly when you are wearing lashes, is always go back in with your eyeliner and just cover that lash band, you guys. Sometimes there's gunky glue, you know, you just want to make sure that it looks nice and clean. So when you're looking down, it doesn't look like a hot mess. So we're just going in with the same eyeliner that I used earlier, and I'm just giving it a nice little coat to make the line look very sharp and even, and then to also get rid of any appearance of the lash glue. Okay, you guys, we're like 98% done with this beginner friendly glam. The last step is our lips. So I'm gonna be going in with a lip liner by Morphe in the shade Bite Me, and I'm just gonna line the edges of my lips. I'm following the natural shape of my lip. However, I do like to overline just a little bit right here at the highest point of my cupid's bow. And the reason why is because I like a really nice Bratz doll looking lip. If I was to overline around here, it's gonna give me a very like wide mouth. And personally for me, I don't think that looks the best. So I'm gonna keep it nice and natural on the sides here towards the end, but I'm gonna overline just a bit right here to kind of give me that really nice center pout. And then for the bottom of my lip, I like to start at the center bottom here. So same thing, I go a little bit lower here, and then I kind of apply it upwards to meet the corner of my mouth. So basically the outer edges of my lip liner will always be the most natural. So I'll follow the actual shape, but the center right here is where it kind of comes out a little bit more. And for my lipstick, I'm gonna be using MAC's Call It Cozy lipstick, and I'm just gonna apply this to the center of my lip. I'm just gonna do the top and the bottom, and with my finger I'm gonna go in and apply the rest to the outer ends. The reason why I don't like to go in and apply the lipstick all over the lips is because I feel like it can cover up that lip liner, especially because the lip liner is darker than the lipstick, but it's not drastically darker. So I want to keep the definition there by just tapping it on the center, since this is the area where I want my lips to kind of pull out the farthest. And then I always go back in with my lip liner to just lightly bring back any shape that I might have lost. And this next step is optional, but I like to go in with a lip gloss to just kind of like enhance that dimension on the center of the lips. Oh my god, that's so pretty. And then I'll just blend it in the same way. So focusing this just on the center, blending in the rest onto the sides with my finger. This also helps my lips look much more hydrated since it's very cold right now and my lips are super dry. Oh my god, that is so pretty. And to finish off this makeup, I'm just gonna go in with some MAC Fix Plus. Love that. So this is just gonna help melt in those powders. I feel like MAC Fix Plus is the type of setting spray that every makeup user needs, just because it helps just melt in everything so that the skin doesn't look cakey. It just kind of helps everything blend in a little bit better too. Okay, you guys, here's the final glam, and I love the way that it came out. I feel like it's very simple, but done up at the same time. So this is the type of makeup that I feel like would be great for work, even just for going out. You can always tone down the eyes if you want. You can completely skip the eyes if you want to just do full face. But let me know, you guys, if you feel that this was beginner friendly. I really wanted to create a look that was kind of broken down and didn't have a lot of the extra steps that you see nowadays in makeup. So let me know if this was easy to follow along with, and I will be back, you guys, with a super dramatic full face if this is something that's just a little too soft for you. Make sure to subscribe and share this with a friend that's in need of a little makeup help, and make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram. But I will see you guys next week. Bye.